The mind is the safest prison ever built. The moment you step out of it, power returns. Living in your head creates the illusion of connection. You feel surrounded by thoughts, imagined conversations, rehearsed explanations, and predicted reactions. But none of it is real. It is mental noise masquerading as preparation. When you finally step out of that space, isolation appears instantly. The silence feels sharp at first because the constant internal dialogue is gone. But this silence is not emptiness. It is clarity. Without mental chatter, you begin to see the environment as it is, not as you fear it to be. When overthinking stops, you also stop projecting meaning onto people who have not earned it. You no longer assume support where none exists. You no longer fear opposition that was never coming. This is where isolation becomes a filter. People who relied on your explanations drift away. Those who needed your emotional availability feel uncomfortable. They were connected to your noise, not your direction. Their absence is not a loss, it is information. It shows you who was drawn to your uncertainty and who respects movement without explanation. Stepping out of your head forces you to confront reality without emotional cushioning. You are no longer distracted by imagined outcomes. You see results instead. Action produces immediate feedback, not opinions, not reassurance. Feedback. This is uncomfortable for those who lived in thought because action exposes gaps quickly. But this exposure is useful. It removes fantasy. You stop romanticizing effort and start measuring effectiveness. What works stays. What fails is adjusted. There is no internal debate, only response. Isolation also strips away performative behavior. When you are no longer narrating your struggle internally, you stop performing it externally. You don't seek to be seen trying. You focus on moving. This changes how you carry yourself. Your posture shifts. Your speech shortens. Your presence sharpens. Others sense this change before they understand it. Some misinterpret it as coldness. In reality, it is containment. Your energy is no longer leaking into thought. Without constant mental commentary, you stop anticipating reactions. Anticipation weakens action because it places control in imagined hands. When you leave your head, you reclaim that control. You act without rehearsing approval or rejection. This is where power begins to form, not through dominance, but through detachment. You are no longer reacting to possibilities. You are responding to reality. Isolation, in this sense, is not about being alone. It is about being undistracted. You are separated from noise, not from people, and once this separation happens, your perception becomes accurate. You notice who watches quietly, who tests boundaries, who waits for direction. This awareness is impossible when you are trapped in thought. Thought blurs behavior. Silence reveals it. Once you experience this clarity, returning to constant overthinking feels unbearable. You recognize it as confinement. The mind is useful, but living inside it dulls instinct. Stepping out sharpens it. You become less emotionally available to chaos and more responsive to opportunity. This is why everything changes. Not because the world shifts, but because your perception finally aligns with reality. When you stop living in your head, the first thing that changes is how much you speak. Mental noise had trained you to explain yourself, to fill silence, to justify actions before they even happened. Once that noise fades, silence becomes natural, not forced, not awkward, functional. You realize how much information you were leaking through unnecessary words. Every explanation revealed intention. Every justification invited judgment. Silence corrects this instantly. It closes access. Without constant internal commentary, you no longer feel the urge to narrate your process. You act, then move on. This makes your direction harder to track. People can only interfere with what they understand. When your words disappear, their certainty follows. They begin to guess. Guessing weakens them. It shifts their focus from strategy to speculation. While they attempt to interpret you, you remain free to operate. Silence also changes power dynamics. Those who talk excessively surrender control without realizing it. They respond to reactions instead of shaping them. When you stop speaking unnecessarily, others adjust around you. Conversations slow. Questions increase, attention shifts toward you because you are no longer predictable. Predictability invites manipulation. Unreadability blocks it. This is why silence has always unsettled people. It denies them access. Stepping out of your head removes the impulse to defend yourself. Defense implies vulnerability. When you were trapped in thought, imagined criticism felt real, so you preemptively protected yourself with explanations. Now imagined threats no longer control you. Only real ones matter. And real threats rarely announce themselves. Silence keeps you alert. It prevents emotional overreaction. You conserve energy by not fighting battles that exist only in your mind. Silence is not withdrawal. It is positioning. You listen more because you are not busy rehearsing replies internally. You notice tone shifts, micro-reactions, timing. This information was always present, but mental noise drowned it out. Once quiet, perception sharpens. You see who speaks to dominate and who speaks to conceal insecurity. You hear hesitation where confidence was claimed. This awareness creates leverage without confrontation. When action replaces thought, silence supports momentum. You don't stop to explain progress. You don't slow movement to reassure others. You allow results to speak when they arrive. Until then, restraint protects direction. This frustrates people who rely on dialogue to feel in control. They push for clarity. You offer none. Not out of hostility, but out of discipline. Over time, this silence becomes part of your presence. Others describe you as calm or reserved, without understanding why. What they sense is containment. Your energy is no longer scattered through words. It is stored, available. This makes your eventual statements heavier. When you do speak, it lands, because it is rare. Because it is deliberate. Silence, once adopted, is difficult to abandon. You recognize how exposed constant talking made you. You see how easily people were able to influence you when you were mentally loud. Now quiet is not something you practice. It is something you protect. And in that protection, control stabilizes. When you stop living in your head, motivation loses its authority. The mind had convinced you that action requires the right feeling, the right confidence, the right internal alignment. That belief kept you stalled. Thought turned hesitation into preparation and delay into strategy. Once you step out of that cycle, you see it clearly. Feeling ready was never a requirement. It was a distraction. Without mental negotiation, action becomes procedural. You build structure because structure does not argue with you. It does not ask how you feel. It functions. Repetition replaces inspiration. Routine replaces emotion. You move because movement is scheduled, not because you are convinced. This is uncomfortable at first. The mind resists being sidelined. It offers doubt, fatigue, rationalizations, but structure ignores all of it. And because it ignores it, it wins. When structure takes control, progress becomes predictable. Not easy, predictable. You know what will happen if you act and what will happen if you don't. This clarity removes drama. Overthinking thrived on uncertainty. Structure dissolves it. You no longer waste energy deciding whether to act. The decision has already been made. You only execute. This is where discipline stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like identity. Living outside your head also exposes how unreliable motivation really is. Motivation rises and falls with mood, comfort, and external feedback. It collapses under pressure. Structure remains. Structure does not care if conditions are ideal. It was designed for resistance. Once you rely on it, you stop being surprised by difficulty. Difficulty becomes expected. This expectation stabilizes you. Others react emotionally to obstacles. You adjust mechanically. Action without internal debate creates momentum. Momentum silences doubt faster than reassurance ever could. Each completed action reinforces the next. This builds a feedback loop grounded in behavior, not belief. You trust yourself because you have evidence. You moved yesterday. You moved today. You moved today. You will move tomorrow. This trust is stronger than confidence. Confidence can be shaken. Evidence cannot. When structure governs action, fear loses leverage. Fear feeds on imagination. Imagination thrives in stillness. Structure removes stillness. You are too engaged to catastrophize. The mind no longer has space to create scenarios because your attention is occupied by execution. Fear does not disappear. It becomes irrelevant. You feel it, but it no longer dictates behavior. Over time, this way of operating reshapes how you see effort. You stop romanticizing struggle. You stop waiting for clarity. Clarity arrives through action, not before it. This realization is permanent. Once experienced, you cannot unlearn it. Thought returns to its proper place as a tool, not a residence. Structure does not make you rigid. It makes you resilient. When conditions change, you adjust the system, not your commitment. The commitment is non-negotiable. Only the method adapts. This keeps progress alive in unstable environments. And instability no longer feels threatening because your movement does not depend on emotional certainty. Stepping out of your head and into structure changes everything because it removes the last excuse. You are no longer waiting on yourself. You are already in motion. When you stop living in your head, independence stops being an idea and becomes a condition. You are no longer waiting for internal approval to move. There is no committee inside you debating risk, consequence, or perception. That silence creates leverage. You act while others hesitate, not because you are fearless, but because you are unoccupied. Most people are slowed by internal dependency. They need reassurance, certainty, or alignment before they commit. You do not, and that difference compounds quickly. Mental dependence is subtle. It shows up as replaying conversations, anticipating reactions, or imagining how actions will be judged. All of this drains energy before action even begins. Once you step out of your head, that drain stops. You no longer borrow motivation from imagined outcomes. You rely on execution. This makes you harder to influence. Manipulation requires emotional engagement. When your emotions are not constantly activated by thought, there is nothing to grip. Independence also changes how power responds to you. Power does not chase those who need validation. It tests those who do not. When you are internally free, you do not signal desperation. You are not eager to be chosen. You are already moving. This creates asymmetry. Others feel it even if they cannot name it. They sense that you are not dependent on their approval, their timing, or their permission. That alone shifts dynamics. Living outside your head sharpens presence. You are not half absorbed in thought while pretending to listen. You are there, fully. This presence unsettles people who rely on distraction to maintain control. They expect hesitation. They expect emotional leakage. Instead, they meet stillness. Stillness forces others to reveal themselves. They speak more. They rush. They fill gaps you learn without asking. Independence also removes urgency. Urgency is a signal of need. When you were trapped in thought, urgency came from imagined deadlines and feared losses. Now time is neutral. You act when conditions align, not when anxiety demands relief. This patience is mistaken for passivity by those who do not understand it. But patience backed by readiness is dangerous. It means you are not reacting. You are choosing. As independence deepens, your relationship with risk changes. You no longer dramatize it. Risk becomes a variable, not a threat. You assess it, account for it, and move accordingly. Emotional exaggeration disappears. This makes your decisions cleaner. You are less likely to overcommit out of excitement or retreat out of fear. Balance replaces impulse. That balance is rare. Others often misread this independence as detachment. They assume you do not care. In truth, you care selectively. Your attention is no longer scattered across imagined futures. It is focused on what is happening. This focus gives you an advantage in every environment. You see openings others miss because they are distracted by internal noise. Eventually, this way of operating becomes permanent. Even when pressure increases, you do not retreat inward. You stay present. You stay functional. You stay deliberate. At that point, leverage no longer comes from position or authority. It comes from self-sufficiency. You are not easily rushed. Not easily provoked, not easily controlled. That is the final change. When you stop living in your head, you stop being managed by it. And anyone who cannot be managed internally becomes difficult to manage externally. Most people never leave their mind. Those who do stop asking what might happen and start deciding what will.